The San Francisco 49ers are the number one seed in the NFC, and it doesn't matter how many times I say it, it never gets old. This is a magical season, and I hope that it continues through the Super Bowl, and we finally get number 6. Ryan and I have a ton to talk about. We're going to give you updates on Brock Purdy. Are the 49ers Super Bowl favorites, or should they be Super Bowl favorites? They are Super Bowl favorites. And would you pay Brandon Ayuk? We're going to talk about that plus more next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time, which means I got my guy, Ryan G. Hensley, in the building. What's up, Ryan?
What's going on, man? Things are picking up for the 49ers, man. This is exciting. It's getting to be real exciting. Although this Rams game looks like both teams are going to be, it's not really necessary for either team, but just in general, getting into the postseason, getting into the playoffs, it's exciting, man. Looking forward to it. So I got a lot of good things planned for it.
Yeah, right on. Hey, CJ, yeah, coach told me that he saw you at the game. That's cool. Definitely like it when I go to games and people come say what's up, especially people that have been supporting for a long time. It's always enjoyable to meet y'all. All right, let's talk about Brock Purdy. We start this show off the same every Tuesday. Give number updates. Now, we're at the end of the season, so really this is probably the last time we're going to do this. And quite frankly, I mean, it was a great season for Brock Purdy, but why don't you give us the final update of the season, where he stands in the whole quarterback conversation statistically?
Yeah, he's jumped up quite a bit in completions. He's up to 13th now, up 3 spots. He's been consecutively just jumping up in that area. So he has 286 completions, which is 13th in the NFL, and over only 20th in attempts with 440. He jumped up 1 spot there, but 3 spots in completions, which means he's continuing to convert at a high clip. That's why his completion percentage is 4th in the NFL at 69.4. In yards, he's 2nd. Which is the same position he was in last week with 4,280. Average still in first, 9.6 per. Yards per game, 5th with 267, same spot as last week. Long, down 2 spots. Again, that one's probably the least important on this whole thing. 76-yard is his long for the season, down 2 spots, but again, not very important. Passing touchdown, 2nd with 31, just behind Dak Prescott, same as last week. By 1 spot. I think Dak has 32. Interception, he's tied for 20th with 11, which is up 6 spots. He was 26th. And so sacks, he's tied for 6th. What does it say? He's tied for 6, up 6 spots. So he's improved in that area. He didn't get sacked at all last week. And then sacks for loss, he's 3rd, which is really good. QBR rating 1st for both, 72.7 and 113. He's still, if we're looking at trends, and I think we can talk a little bit about what he's going to be doing in the Rams game. I don't suspect he's going to be playing the whole game. I really doubt it. But he is trending right now, 4,547 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions.
Yeah, it's a hell of a season, man. It's a hell of a season. I want to talk about, because I made a tweet and people really have problems with comprehension. So I made a tweet yesterday and I said that the number, because he broke the 49ers passing record for a season.
Yeah.
And what I said was the number itself is not impressive. It actually ranks 132nd. So Jeff Garcia's 49ers passing record ranked 132nd prior to Brock Purdy breaking it. And what I said was, going forward, I actually think this is the beginning, and Brock Purdy, assuming he's going to be the quarterback for the foreseeable future, I think he's going to break that record multiple times over. Like, if he's doing it in year 2, next year it'll probably be more, the year after. Like, he's going to continuously break that number. That number for the 49ers franchise was like, I think 26 other teams had a higher mark. So what I was saying was the record itself was not impressive. The number was not impressive. What Brock Purdy is doing in year 2, very impressive. So I wanted to make sure that there's a clear distinction there. And that's why I ended it by saying, hey, I think he's going to break it multiple times over, because what he's doing individually is impressive, but that number, that yardage number, is not an impressive number. It's just not in the
Mm.
annals of history.
Yeah, I think what how I look at it really is that it speaks to how much of a drought the 49ers have had in regard to
Mm,
quarterback play over the last 23 years, right? Because
yeah.
that record should have been broken a long time ago. But the fact that it hasn't been broken in that long speaks to how bad it's been at the quarterback position for the 49ers. 49ers finally have a quarterback that's able to, you know, compete at a good level. And so, it's remarkable what Brock Purdy has done. But overall, in general, the 49ers total passing yard record hasn't been that great. And I think that's what you meant.
Yeah, basically saying like, hey, listen, it, it it's crazy that it hasn't been broken before, because
Mhm.
it's not an impressive number. Like it's the Bears and a couple other miserable franchises that are behind
Right.
the 49ers, or were behind the 49ers, until Brock Purdy broke it. And like I said, he's going to continue. He'll probably break it again next year, the year after that, what have you. And every time he does, he's going to push that number further and further up where it should be to be a respectable number. But it wasn't that respectable until he broke it. It just wasn't, but what
Mhm.
he's doing is very respectable. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was crystal clear about that, because, this is airing on Twitter, and we get to see the Twitter comments now, and,
Oh, yeah.
people can come check it out. But yeah, that's basically what I meant by the tweet. Either way, fantastic season for Brock Purdy, fantastic season for the San Francisco 49ers, more importantly. And they are the number one seed for the first time since 2019. Pretty damn awesome, I would say. How crazy would it be? How crazy would it be if Harbaugh and Shanahan
Mhm.
win their championship in their respective areas of coaching in the same season? That'd be kind of nuts, right?
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool, man, because we have that nostalgia for Harbaugh. When I was writing for Bleacher Report, he was the coach there. Well, actually, I got to start with the end of the Singletary era and
Mm.
then go into the Harbaugh era, and that's when I stopped, was during the Harbaugh era. So I got to experience quite a bit of Harbaugh, and now we've had 7 years of Kyle. So definitely relatable to both of those guys. Yeah, I'm not a big college football guy, to be honest. I just too busy to dive into a whole nother sport, even though it's football, but it's a whole different, it's college versus NFL. But when I tune in, I love to watch Harbaugh just because there's a little bit of nostalgia there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. He's doing a great job. I hope they win it. I think Washington's probably going to beat him, but we'll see how it goes. Charles has become a member. Thank you so much, Charles. Appreciate you. Saw your message that followed that up. Really do appreciate you. And Matt says, I'm still arguing with meatheads on Twitter. It'll never end. Just here's a word of advice for me, or from me to you, I should say. On Twitter, you're never, ever, ever going to win an argument. Even if you feel like you're the last person that responded and you won, it's going to take so much out of you that you're not actually going to win. So here's what I would do. If you have a take, it doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be controversial. You could say the sky is blue, and somebody's going to be like, well, I live in such and such, and the sky is gray, so you're wrong. Doesn't matter what the take is. If you don't want to deal with it, tweet what you want to tweet, mute the tweet so you don't get any of the responses, and go about your day. That's it. Like, that's what I do. I just say what I want to say. I don't really care about the responses, so I mute the responses, and that's that. So there it is.
I wish I had that discipline. Jesse's been giving me that advice for a while now. I just can't. Sometimes when I have time, man, I just want to get into it. I enjoy it a little bit. So many people tell me to do what you just said to do. So many good people, like Bonte Hill hits me up, like, dude, just chill out, man. Like, leave those,
Yeah.
ignore them. And I'm like, I just can't, Bonte. I just can't.
Oh,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not acting like I'm above it. There are times that I get in the weeds, and I do. I mean, for the most part, I like to interact with people, so I hate
Mm,
taking that approach. But I also know that what I'm going to say is going to be received by a fan base
hmm
as a slight in some manner. If you don't glaze everything that the 49ers do, then you're a hater. And so I'm going to say what I want to say, and I'm going to mute the whole thing. And that's going to be that. So there you go. And then
Yeah.
I will elaborate when I'm over here and people can actually read the tone and all of it together and then come with their own thoughts about what my opinions are. So that's
I
just
like your
safer.
approach. I like your approach. It's smarter, it's better. I just I have a problem doing it. I in my mind I know it's the right thing to do, right?
But you just won't do it. I got
I
it.
just
I
can't
got
do
it.
it.
I got it.
Yeah.
All right, man. The 49ers, I mean, believe it or not, the 49ers are Super Bowl favorites, even after losing to the Ravens. And I try to think about this. And last week, after they had lost to the Ravens, I thought to myself, how can they still be Super Bowl favorites? And then you watch what the Ravens did to Miami. You're like, okay, this even more proof that the 49ers shouldn't be Super Bowl favorites. It should be the Ravens, right?
Mm.
But the more I thought about it, it actually started to make sense. I'll save my take because I don't want to step on your toes, but do you think that the 49ers should be Super Bowl favorites at this point going into week 18? What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are I feel like they're gonna win the Super Bowl. There's something about this season makes me feel that way. So let me preface this with saying I feel like the 49ers are gonna win the Super Bowl. Do I feel like
Yes.
they should be the favorites? No. I mean, they lost to the Ravens who who are have a better record and they lost. Now, I
Yeah.
think the 49ers are going to win the thing. I really do. But if you lose to a team in the manner that you lose to them, I don't think it's a head-to-head matchup against two teams that are most likely going to be in the Super Bowl and the Niners did not do well. So I think they should not be the favorites. But that being said, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. So I don't know if that makes much sense to people watching, but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, here's my thoughts. So again, I agree on the surface that they should not be the favorites based off of losing to the Ravens, and the Ravens are getting hot at the best time in the world. They also, by the way, have clinched the number 1 seed over in the AFC, which I think we can all say is a tougher conference, at least
Mm,
now.
mhm,
That being said, the reason that I think the 49ers should be Super Bowl favorites is the path to get to the Super Bowl is much clearer in my opinion. If I say, hey, you know what? The Ravens are going to play the Browns in round 1 and the Browns beat them, you'd be like, I'm going to pick the Ravens, but you wouldn't be that shocked by it. The Browns have a great defense. Flacco's playing really good. It's kind of a revenge game. It's a division game. They're 1-1. You can see a path to that happening. Or if I said, okay, they're going to play the Buffalo Bills and a hot Josh Allen that just won 5 straight or whatever to get to the playoffs, and the Bills beat them. Like, oh, I can see that scenario. Or even the Chiefs. Hey, they've been down all season offensively. Defensively, they've been great. And Patrick Mahomes gets hot at the right time. You really can write a scenario where you see it. But then when I switch over to the NFC and I say, hey, well, Dallas is gonna beat San Francisco. I can't even say it with a serious face because it's not a serious take. It's just not. To pick against the 49ers in the NFC, I, I just can't see a scenario where the 49ers lose to these teams that they've already mollywopped all the way through. I can see a scenario where the Ravens could lose. Now, what I do think can also happen, I think both can be true, where the 49ers are the favorites because of what I just laid out. But if the 49ers and Ravens play in the Super Bowl, I would bet you, barring crazy health issues, that the Ravens would be the favorite in that scenario. And I think that that would be the rightful thing to do. Now, I think the 49ers certainly can win that game, but if they play head to head, I bet you would see all of a sudden the Ravens be the favorite, even though they weren't the favorite going into the playoffs because of what I just laid out. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the 49ers have the closest to a this sounds bad, right? But I feel
Uh,
like they have the closest to 100% of getting to the Super Bowl. I know it sounds bad. It's not homer. It sounds like a homer take to a lot of people. I got my buddy Melvin in the chat. He's a Cowboys fan. He probably thinks that sounds ridiculous. But from the NFC standpoint, like you said, I feel like the 49ers are the most sure thing as far as getting to the Super Bowl. It's hard for me to imagine them losing 2 games at home healthy and not making it there. Now, winning it, that's a different thing and depending on the opponent. But I really believe they're going to get there. So I see what you're saying.
yeah, I just, to me, I don't see a path to them. And If the 49ers weren't in it, the NFC would be super interesting because I can see a scenario. I could make a case for Dallas, Detroit, even Philly, as bad as they've been, the Rams. I really could make a case for all of these teams winning potentially the NFC, even the Packers. Like, I could
Yeah.
really see crazy scenarios where these teams upset each other and one team comes out. But the 49ers are just in a spot right now where they're so much better than everybody in the NFC. And I look at the Ravens, who are clearly the best team at this moment, but they're not so much better than those teams in the AFC. There's some tough competition over there and some great quarterbacks, good defenses as well. That's why I think the 49ers should be the favorite. I just think the path to the Super Bowl is a much clearer one than what the Ravens have currently.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I think there's levels to this, and in the NFC, the Niners are on a different level. But when it comes to the AFC, that's a different beast as well. So, yeah, I'm going to be nervous as hell. Like, I feel like the 49ers are going to get there. If they get there, I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to want them to win. I feels like this is the season where they win just because of everything that's going on with this team. But the opponents in the AFC are tough. So I'm going to be pretty nervous in that Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a Super Bowl, assuming the 49ers get there. And here's the thing. I feel very confident the 49ers are going to go to the Super Bowl, but I'm even more confident that they're going to win at least one game. And them winning one game at this point puts them in the NFC Championship. And I'm booked to be at the NFC Championship. It's already done. It's set in stone, ready to go.
Yeah.
I did it like 3 weeks ago
David told
and
me.
was arrogant enough 3 weeks ago to say the 49ers were going to get the number 1 seed and they would be in the NFC Championship. And so far, so good. Everything's lined up. So barring something crazy, that's going to happen, and I'm going to be there, and that's a bucket list thing. The Super Bowl obviously would be like the main bucket list, but it's just gotten out of hand. It's way too expensive. I'll probably never be at a Super Bowl unless somehow I get free tickets or win tickets. But the NFC Championship is as close as I'm ever going to get, so that is definitely a bucket list item for me for sure.
That's dope. Yeah, David reached out to me. Hopefully, he asked if me, you, and Grant, and David and yourself can all just get together at some point on that trip. So hopefully, we can do
Yeah.
that, man. But hopefully, we're not eating humble pie here in a minute. Like, right? Like, we're assuming that this is gonna go down the way we think it's gonna go down, and
For sure.
yeah, we'll see.
Crazier things have happened, but I feel pretty damn good about it.
Right.
Brother Bob says, well, since we're on the subject, sup with PP, mute. Nice. Hey, listen, I'm not going to take my platform in time to address other people. I've said what I'm going to say about the situation, and whatever I decide to do, I decide to do. But this is not the spot for it. Matt says, I go after Pig in a Pickle, DB, and DL, all idiots. Sorry. You're talking about Twitter, I'm assuming, Matt? Well, shout out to you if that's what you want to do. Brother Bob says, and morning to Nails and Ryan OG Hensley, we better win the Super Bowl. This is the year, man. This has got to be the year. Everything is lining up perfect. I feel like this is it. I'm with Ryan. I feel like this is it. Randall says, I've said this time and time again, Vegas doesn't care about anyone's feelings. They care about money. He's saying that the 49ers are easier to bet, I guess. I don't know. Keith Murphy says Ravens' path is tough. More elite QBs to go through in the AFC. All of the elite QBs are in the AFC except for like one in the NFC, and that's Matthew Stafford. And I would say out of the elite QBs, he's like 6th or 7th on that list. So Jaleel says, Ryan, I got a suggestion. Split your sponsorship announcement up during your streams. Just a thought. Keep doing what y'all do. Bang, bang, Niner gang.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah,
You should take
sometimes
his
it's easier.
advice. I don't
Sometimes
know.
it's
I
easy for
haven't
me
seen it.
to. Sometimes it's easier for me to just knock it out real quick, so I don't have to think about it. Because once I get into the flow of the show, I don't like to have to stop and get into the sponsors. But I appreciate the advice, man. I'll consider it for sure.
Keenan says, loving the new layout and toast to 3 months. Thank you so much, Keenan. I appreciate you being around a lot longer than 3 months, but being a member for 3 months. Greatly appreciated. Official B&A Music says if Brock averages 4,280 a season for the next 8 years, he'll be the all-time passing leader at 35,000. For context, Marino leads at 61,000. To the point, right, of the 49ers have some of the best quarterbacks of all time. Steve Young is my favorite quarterback of all time. But because of circumstances, when Joe Montana played, when Steve Young played, how short Steve Young's career actually was as far as starting, some of these big numbers that are 49ers records are not impressive when you compare them to other teams, other players. They're just not. Now, that doesn't make the players any less impressive, but the overall numbers are just, they're not there, unfortunately. And it's crazy to think that when you look, because nobody would argue that the 49ers haven't had two top 10 quarterbacks basically back to back when it came to Joe Montana and Steve Young. So,
Yeah.
Matt
Also,
says, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, just also to reiterate, I mean, it's a testament to how bad the quarterbacks have been for the 49ers for a long time. Yeah.
For sure. Matt says, I've been on BA being elite trained for a while, and BA is Brock's security blanket. Keep them together. Well, great segue, because now we're going to talk about Brandon Ayuk. And I think there's multiple ways that we can have this conversation, Ryan. You know, we can talk about, first of all, let's give him credit. He's had a fantastic season, over 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. When you look at his target rate, how often he's targeted compared to some of these top players in the league, I mean, based off of his numbers, if you just gave him the same targets and everything else stayed the same as far as catch percentage and everything, he'd be by far and away leading everybody in the NFL, and he would be the league MVP. He'd have like over 2,000 yards, and it would be absolutely insane. But that's not the way that it works. Either way, Brandon Ayuk, in a year when it's time to get paid, has come through, and he's improved every single season. It's phenomenal to watch him play. The question is, I think that we all agree that we want to keep Ayuk on this team, but the real question is, does he, and are you comfortable with paying him top 5 receiver money? I mean, that's what it's going to be. You're going to have Debo who's making that money, and then you're asking to pay Ayuk that same kind of money. Do you think that the 49ers should do it without hesitation? How do you foresee this playing out? Like, what do you think about the Brandon Ayuk pending contract situation this offseason?
Well, you brought it up, right? If he was targeted as much as the rest of these receivers, he'd be the number one receiver in the NFL. I mean, he is 6th in total yards, but only 34th in targets. So he's 6th in total yards, but only 34th in targets. He has the greatest yards separation in the NFL, most yards per reception in the NFL. He's had a career year as far as yards are concerned. He is definitely a top 5 receiver to me in the NFL, and he should be paid like one as well. And the 49ers absolutely should sign Brandon Ayuk. And here's the reason. Brandon Ayuk is exactly what you want from a football player. He is a leader by example. Everything he does outside of the season, outside of the locker room, in the locker room, on the practice field, it's exactly what you want as a coach. He reminds me of Bosa in that regard, because when Bosa is gone during the offseason, you know he's putting in that work and he's going to come back and be in phenomenal shape. It's the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. You know that he's out there putting in the work and he's going to come back and be in phenomenal shape. And I think Brandon Ayuk knows what's coming his way. I've been watching a lot of press conferences from Brandon Ayuk throughout his career. And this last one that I saw from Brandon Ayuk seemed like a more mature, accomplished Brandon Ayuk, who knows that he just went out and did exactly what he needed to do to secure his family's future for generations. And he's absolutely going to get paid. Now, what do I think is going to happen? I think the Niners are going to do what they did with Nick Bosa and drag this thing out to the last second and try to get him for as cheap as possible. But that ultimately will end up with him, is what I imagine is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't see a scenario where he's not on the team this upcoming season. Even if they decide to franchise tag him, it's just not going to happen. So he will be on this team. In fact, I think next year he's in the 5th year. So he's going to be on the team no matter what. Under that contract, it's when you sign him this offseason, you're paying him for future years. So BA is going to be a 49er. The question is how long can you really pay him and Debo congruently? How long can that happen? Next year, it's going to be fine. Maybe the year after that, it actually might be fine too, because we'll see how long Trent Williams is here, Eric Armstead, George Kittle, CMC even. I think in 2 years, there's a chance that all these guys are not on the roster and the money is freed up and it's fine, even though you're likely going to be paying Purdy at that time as well. I could see a scenario where it's actually able to work, but it's going to be a year-to-year thing, and we're going to see. I think Nicotina brings up a really interesting point here, and I want to talk about this because I feel like there's, and this is not you, Nicotina. I think this is just the overall concept of the way that the 49ers view the situation with Deebo Samuel. He says, but without Deebo, the Niners offense completely struggled. Kind of. Here's what I want to say. Last year, they went without Deebo for a few games, and the offense didn't miss a beat. This year, they went without Deebo and Trent Williams. Right? That's a key kicker in there. There was no Deebo, but there was also no Trent Williams when the offense completely struggled. So was that a Deebo thing? When we look at last year without Deebo, the offense kept it humming. When we look this year, it was Deebo and Trent. I'm not trying to make the case that Deebo is not important to this team because he absolutely is. But to say that this offense struggled just because Deebo was out, I feel like we're forgetting that Trent Williams was also not in, and that's a pretty big miss.
Trent Williams is more important to this team than Deebo, and so I would go with Trent. And shout out to Nicotina. I wonder if is it Andre Nicotina, the rapper? Man, nice.
Could be.
Maybe,
yeah, could be.
maybe. I know that's where you get your name from, right there. Either way, but yeah, no, I think it's a Trent thing more than anything.
Yeah, and listen, he's a hell of an impactful player. And when Debo's going, I don't know that there's many weapons in the league that are on the level of Deebo Samuel. I completely acknowledge that. I've seen this a lot from people where they're like, well, but Deebo, I mean, when we missed Ayuk for the one game, we were fine. It's like, well, yeah, take Ayuk and Trent out and see how things go. I'd be curious to see how that worked out. You know what I mean? Those are two very, very different things. So,
And Janky makes a good point, and I agree with it. It's a Debo without CMC is crucial. Since they got CMC, he's still
for sure.
amazing, still fantastic,
Yes.
still one of the best
Yes.
weapons in the NFL, but not as crucial as he is when CMC is not here.
Yeah, most certainly, most certainly. So I agree. I think that's that. I mean, it's Trent. It's definitely Trent as well. All these players are important. They're all very good. I mean, we just had a season where Brock Purdy threw for well over 4,000 yards in 16 games in his second year. Fantastic. You've got Deebo over 1,000 total yards. You've got BA over 1,000 total yards. You've got Kittle over 1,000 total yards. You've got CMC over 2,000 total yards. And you still have the best left tackle in the game and a hell of a play caller. Everybody deserves credit. This team is phenomenal. I think if you take any one of them out, you're not going to feel great about it. We can argue about who's the most important and who was the MVP and all those things. But I bet you all of them look at each other and say, you're just as important and just as great to this team as I am. They wouldn't look at any of them as more important or less than important. I think they all played a huge part into what this team has been this year and what this offense has been this year, for sure.
Absolutely.
Matt says BA is Brock's. Yep. Okay. Got that one. Just forgot to move past it. That's what started the conversation. Calvin says, Happy New Year, Jesse and Ryan. Happy New Year's. One game at a time. Thanks for the great contents. Appreciate you, Calvin. Matt says, let's clear this up. The false narrative. BA only has 2 drops. People think he has the dropsies. Yeah, it is interesting. I will say that he's had, I don't know what he's been over the last few years, but I feel like there was a couple seasons there maybe where his drops were a little bit higher.
Yeah.
If you're saying it's only 2 drops, that's I don't know the exact number, but that sounds about right. A lot of people looked at some of these games and just like, oh, he had 3 drops at the Cleveland game. He had 3 drops in the Cleveland game. No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
If it touches your hand, it's a drop. That's not how it
that's
works.
not the way it works. If you're running, and I made the argument then, and I'll make it now, it's not ever going to count as a drop when you're running full speed in one direction. And as you're running full speed in that direction, the ball is placed on your back shoulder and you've got to reach and try to make an acrobatic grab just because it touched your hands. That is not a drop. Now, if the argument is, hey, I think BA, if he's an elite receiver, should make those catches, okay, well, let's have that conversation. That's fine. but it's not a drop. And there's no
Yeah.
argument there. That is not how drops are calculated. So
I want to get your take on this. Since we're on the subject of BA, I want to get your
Mhm.
opinion. It's something I tweeted out yesterday. And I
Yeah.
got Stats and Steph's chances coming on my show after this. I'm going to ask them the same question because
Yeah.
I got some pushback. Do you think Brandon Ayuk, I said Brandon Ayuk is the best 49ers receiver since Terrell Owens? You know, and people brought up Debo. They brought up Anquan Bolden. They brought up Randy Moss. But I think Anquan Bolden was a little beyond his prime at the point. He's a little slow, amazing hands, tough as hell. And so no disrespect to him. Randy Moss was
Anquan Bolden's one of my
way,
favorite players of all
yeah,
time.
love him, love him. And Moss was way past his prime.
Yeah.
Debo's not a pure receiver. So that's how I eliminate all these guys. Brandon Lloyd's super talented, but he never put it together like BA. So to me, it's
Mhm.
BA. I want to get your take on that.
Oh, I think it's BA as well. I don't think that there's really a lot of the only argument really could be Debo. If you want to argue Debo, let's have the conversation. And then I would argue weapon versus pure receiver. I guess that's how you look at it. If you're just saying they're the same position, I think we can have a real conversation there. But when you look at Randy Moss, I mean, Randy Moss, of course, Randy Moss is a better player than Brandon Ayuk. But when he was in a Niners uniform, he was way past his
He was a
prime.
shell of himself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, the only other person that you can actually say that is not Debo Samuel is probably Michael Crabtree. That is the other person you can have the conversation with. And at this point, maybe when you look at his whole time with the 49ers versus Ayuk's, you can have the conversation. I think Ayuk is better than Crabtree personally. But, that's the other player that I can say, all right, maybe you can have that conversation. But yeah, I think it's Ayuk. I would go with Ayuk personally. I would.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
And it's not, to your point, it's not just the receiving, it's everything else. Every single game, if there's a big play, you can bet your butt that Brandon Ayuk is down there in the highlight blocking. How important is that to the team? How important is that stuff? I mean, do these big plays happen if you don't have a receiver like Ayuk that is that willing to get dirty and block as if he's the fifth receiver trying to make this team? No.
Right.
Those things are big. Those things are very, very big. And so, yeah, I think that it's I think you can't overlook those things when you're talking about the overall totality of what Brandon Ayuk is. So
yeah, he leaves nothing to be desired. Honestly, he's really effective in every way and does the right things on every play, man. And I didn't mean to rhyme, but what can I say?
I just may go down by the bay. Mr. G says the NFL salary cap will go up approximately 40 million to 284 in 2 years. Signing BA will be easy. I agree, Mr. G. I think that they're going to be able to sign BA, and I think some of these bigger salaries are going to fall off as well. So it'll be totally fine. Jesus says, Jesse, thanks to Grant and you, I won 500 on Prize Picks when you guys were doing the over-under on the QBs. I need more of that this week. Let's go Niners.
Wow.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you won, Jesus, and thank you for kicking some of it back. I am so happy for you. However, I do the Prize Picks thing with Grant because that's his sponsor. I don't want anybody tailing me and taking my picks, expecting to do what Jesus was able to do this last week. Hey. I don't want to be responsible for you guys gambling and losing money. Now, if you like my picks and you agree with them and you end up winning, that's awesome. But please, please, please don't tail me when I'm making these picks. I would feel awful if you end up in a bad spot losing all of your money because of something I said.
Next week, you're going to get a guy like, hey, Jesse, I did what you told me to do on Prize Picks, and I can't pay my rent.
Don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But I'm very happy for you. Ultimately, you're the one that laid your money down, so you deserve the credit, not me. But thank you so much for that. All right, let's talk about an area of improvement for the San Francisco 49ers. I know that you and I just went crazy and basically laid our claim that they're going to win the Super Bowl and they're going to be there and all those other things. But that does not mean that this is a perfect team, Ryan. I'm going to
Mhm.
go first on this one because I tweeted it out and I think that it's important. Now, I want to be clear. The 49ers, the last two games have been much better in missed tackles. They had,
Yeah.
I believe, 3 this last week and 6 versus the Ravens. Not horrible numbers by any means. But on the season, the 49ers missed tackles, they have not been good at all. I'm going to compare what they've done so far this season through 16 regular season games. And the numbers I'm comparing them to in these other 3 seasons are through the playoffs. So not just regular season, but adding in the playoffs every game in total. So we're talking about much more than 16 total games. We're talking about 19 games minimum
Mhm.
in all of these seasons compared to 16 games played this year. In 2022, the 49ers missed 108 tackles total. In 2021, they missed 129 tackles total. In 2019, they missed 132 tackles in total. The reason I chose those 3 years because those are the 3 years that they made deeper runs. They were good teams. This year through 16 games, even after 2 back-to-back solid games in this category, they have 123 missed tackles. 123. If they have 9 missed tackles this week alone, through
Mhm.
16 games, they already have as many or more missed tackles than they have in any of the 3 seasons I talked about through 19 total games, including the playoffs. That is an area that they need to clean up. Again, much better the last 2 weeks, but I don't feel great just because the last 2 weeks were better that all of a sudden they've turned a corner because all season long this has been an issue up and down throughout the course of the season. It's something that I would like to see them clean up because you start missing tackles in the playoffs, and I fear that it would come back to bite you at some point. What do you think? And then what is an area of improvement for you that the 49ers need to make?
Yeah, obviously that's a big one, and it's something that has been a little bit concerning this year. Is particularly with Fred Warner. Not something I'm used to seeing from Fred Warner are the amount of missed tackles that he's had this year. Now he's, I think, the tackle leader for the 49ers. I'm sure of it, and he's done a good job. But he's had a few games where him missing tackles has really hurt the team, and I'm
He
not
he
sure.
he has, if I remember correctly, he has 23 missed tackles on the season, which is by far the most. Dre
Mhm.
Greenlaw's number 2 at 16. Now, obviously, linebackers are in the mix more than anybody. They get the most tackles, which means they have the most opportunities. So, of course, they're going to have the most missed
Yeah.
tackles. It's a lot of missed tackles, though. It is.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of this, I've talked to Grant about it a lot. He thinks that a lot of this could have to do with, Armstead being gone and them opening up and, taking on blockers for these guys. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what it is, but it's just unusual for Fred Warner. I actually, gave out awards yesterday on my show, and I'm going to talk about it more later on the next one. But I gave the MVP for this defense, the defense player of the year, to Charvarius Ward simply because of that from Fred Warner. Just the amount of missed tackles that I've seen from him is unusual for Fred. And so hopefully that's something they get back on track. So I think you make a fantastic point there, especially in the postseason. It needs to happen. Um, my area of improvement, and I think we saw it this last week against the Commanders. I think a lot of 49er fans were impatient with that game, but I think the way Kyle Shanahan play called against the Commanders was exactly what they need to be doing moving forward. They need to really stick with their identity, and I think at moments they've lost that identity. Yes, Brock Purdy is passing better than any quarterback since Jeff Garcia for the 49ers, and that's fantastic, but this is still a run first defense, time possession team. So you still need to lean on that first, and then that's going to open up the passing game for you second. And I think the 49ers lost track of that against the Ravens, and that was a big part of why they struggled against the Ravens. And I was glad to see them get back to it against the Commanders. And hopefully that's the plan moving forward, even against the Rams this week, even though it's a meaningless game. But when we get into the playoffs, really run first, then go off into the play action. But don't you just think you're a drop back passing team now because Brock Purdy's playing the way he is. That's not the case. We're still a run first, play action team, rely on defense and possession. And I think that improvement needs to be made and permanent throughout this postseason to really have a strong run and play within our identity.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ahmed is giving us the 2024 schedule. Appreciate it, but I think we're focused on what's ahead of us. Although that's going to be fun. That does look like a fun
Buffalo,
schedule.
yeah,
Yeah,
Kansas
I'm
City.
I'm looking forward to that. That's actually
Yeah.
going to be a really fun schedule, and we'll see how it plays out. Then we're going to talk. I'm sure plenty about the schedule this upcoming season. Can't wait for that. But right now we got bigger fish to fry. Let's get to a couple super chats here, and then we'll talk about Jed York. Matt says, read an article saying we may sign Young 2-year, 27 million. Thoughts? And also sign BA as well, but didn't give the numbers. Yeah, I mean, sure. If you can sign Young and BA, I'm fine with it. I'm not giving Young a ton of money. I don't know where those figures come from or how they would even know. I mean, Young's going to hit the open market and he's going to take in plenty of offers, I'm sure, unless he just really, really, really wants to be here. But I would sign him probably at a 2-year, 27. Well, I don't know, man. I got to be honest. Young's been good, and the trade has been fine as far as what they gave up. I would do it again 10 times over. I don't think Young's that special, though. I don't. I maybe that's just me. And 2-year, 27 million isn't special money. I would probably go year to year with somebody like Young. If I was going to sign him, I would probably sign him to a 1-year deal and continuously do that. And if he decides he wants to go somewhere else, then so be it. I don't look at Chase Young and see a special player that has to be on the 49ers in order for them to compete. That's just me.
I'm
What do you
gonna be
think about
real,
Young?
man. I'm gonna be real. I've been more impressed with Randy Gregory than I have Chase Young. I know that sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but when I'm watching, like to me, on pass rusher, one of the most important things is motor. And I don't see a motor from Chase Young, if I'm being real here. Like you see it from Bosa, you see it from Randy Gregory. I don't see it from Chase Young. I think he's extremely talented, but I don't see that motor that you want from a pass rusher.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a little. I mean, honestly, it's disappointing. To be real, like I think they got their money's worth for sure in that trade because they barely gave up anything for him, and he's not a bad player by any means. But this guy was, he's a top. What was he? A top 2, 3 draft pick coming out of college. The expectations for him were really high coming out of college. I know he's had injuries, and maybe that has something to do with it. But I was hoping he was going to be, a little Nick Jr. out there, and we just haven't seen that.
Yeah, for sure. Brother Bob says, Nails, I have to plan. Will there be a Thursday big show? Probably. We'll see. Travis says, who do you want to play LJ?
Who do you want to play?
LJ. LJ in the
I
divisional
guess
round.
unless he's talking about the NBA, LeBron James.
I don't. Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
know.
kidding.
I don't
Yeah,
care
I'm
who
just,
play who. I don't care who the Ravens play. My son probably has an opinion. I would say, listening to him, he prefers to avoid Cleveland and Buffalo. Those are the two teams he seems to think have a chance against the Ravens. Who do we want to play? Let's parlay that question. Maybe that's what he's asking. I don't know.
who do you think comes
Who do we
out?
want to play?
Who do you think comes out of the AFC? Do you think it's the Ravens?
Um, I'll say this: if you're asking me to bet the Ravens or the field, I would take the field. If you're asking me to bet the Niners or the field, I would take the Niners. That's how confident I am that the 49ers are that much better than everybody in the NFC. And that's how also confident I am that the AFC is much tougher to come out of. Because I do think at this very moment that the Ravens are the best team in the league. But man, so much can change. And there are some good teams over in the AFC that are going to give them troubles. It's not going to be easy. So I would take the field over the Ravens, and I would take the 49ers over the field in the NFC. You agree with that? You disagree with that? What are your thoughts?
I think you're right there. Yeah, and it's, something about the Ravens, man. They've been on such a tear. I
Mhm.
believe they're the hottest team in the NFL, right? From a win streak standpoint, you know, the I guess the pessimist in me feels like they're due for a loss at some point, and
Yeah.
because they've been on such a consecutive streak, it's hard. As a coach, I coach basketball for a long time. It's hard to maintain a win streak. You almost at times like you want to win every game. Don't get me wrong, but when you get that loss, you almost feel a little bit of a relief because it's additional pressure winning every single week. I know that sounds crazy, but part of me finds it hard to believe that the Ravens are going to continue winning for the rest of this year into the Super Bowl championship. I just feel like at some point they're going to lose,
Yeah.
and that might come in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I could definitely see it happening. What I will say is impressive though is I was looking up yesterday. They've played current division leaders. So they played the Jaguars. Detroit's going to win their division. The 49ers are going to win their division. And they've played Miami. We'll see if they end up winning their division. And in those 4 games, they outscored those opponents. They went 4-0 and outscored those opponents 150, I think, to 51. That's impressive, man. Though I mean, you're talking about the best of the best, and they have just ran through all of those games as if nothing. You know, the toughest matchup was actually the Jags, and I think they only scored 7 points, but that was like the closest game. I don't know, man. The Ravens are really good, but I don't. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost either. I really wouldn't. Matt says Lamar ranks 26th against the blitz. Bring on Baltimore. So I talked about this an awful lot, Matt, and I thank you for teeing me up on this one. But I talked about this going into that game, and I said, I don't want the 49ers to do the Jalen Hurts thing. That is not going to work. You don't just sit back and let him pick you apart. It's going to be a mistake. What you do is you send 5 at him. You blitz 5 in particular. It's not just blitzing, but it's blitzing 5 in particular. What you do with that is you're forcing him to make quick decisions, and you're also covering up all the pass lanes or run lanes while also leaving enough people in coverage to make it a little bit tight. That's the game plan for Lamar. Now, it's not bulletproof by any means. He's improved so much as a passer. And if you watch him this last week, I mean, my God, man, there wasn't a throw that he couldn't make. He had 3 or 4 throws that were so elite from the pocket. But it is your best chance to beat Lamar, in my opinion. It is. So I agree with you.
Yeah, it seems like their game plan, I was listening to some of them talk, their game plan is to get him on the run and passing. Like they want him to get outside the pocket. The Ravens do, right? They don't want him to just drop back, 3-step drop, get the ball out. That's really not what they like to do.
Yeah. Jay McCullen says the Niners are Super Bowl favorites because of the potential path to the Super Bowl. If the Niners and Ravens met in the Super Bowl, the Ravens would likely be the favorite. It's almost as if you're in my head, because that's exactly what I said when we talked about the Super Bowl favorites thing. Literally exactly what I said. And I assume, by the way, that you're going off of the title and you weren't here for that. But go back and listen to what I said, Jay McCollin, and you will see that I said the exact same thing. So I think that's a very smart take, because I agree with it.
Because it's your take. Yeah.
Because it's my take as well. Matt says Cleveland has been better than both. You can make the argument for that. The argument for that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Jay Morica says, I know Twitter and YouTube is relatively new, but have we ever seen anything like the Brock Purdy discourse online? Say one bad thing and your mentions are flooded. I don't know, man.
I think, and it's not that new, to be honest. It's been around since the early like at least over a decade, 15 years, 20 years, something. I just know that it's Twitter, and there's a bunch of brain dead people on that app, to be honest with you, and with no identity, no recourse for the things they say. So I'm sure you can dive into every fan base, every sport, politics, religion, all of that, and find a slew of boneheads making dumb comments.
Yeah, I think that we're in the middle of it with the whole conversation, so it seems like it's unique. So I agree with that. But I'll also say that when you go on Twitter or you have a YouTube channel, or you post here, pay to get your comments read, if you have a take that people disagree with, you definitely open yourself up to having that conversation. And you just have to be ready for it. You have to have tough skin and just be willing to move past it. It is what it is.
It was the same thing for Jimmy. If you came at Jimmy, you get the same stuff. Yeah, man.
For sure. Yeah, and my big thing is Jamorca, and this is kind of the mantra of the channel. When you go to post for the first time, you'll get this. It'll pop up and say, "Hey, challenge the argument, or the take. Don't challenge the person." Meaning, don't get personal over sports. Like don't do things that you wouldn't do in person. Even if you sit down at a bar, and this isn't like oh, you're not tough. Like you wouldn't do this in person. That is not the conversation I'm trying to have, right? What I'm trying to say is that's just not how people act in real life.
Right.
It's just not how a normal person acts. If you sit down at a bar and you're watching a 49er game and there's a guy sitting next to you and he says something about Brock Purdy that you completely disagree with, there is a 0% chance that you're going to look him in the eyes and be like, you
Clown.
effing piece of crap. You're a clown. You don't know. It's just not
Right.
going to happen.
Right.
Now you may have a conversation and the conversation is going to go whatever way it go, but you're not going to act that way. You're just not. Even if you're looking at it and you're like, dude, this guy's a twerp. Like I would crush him. It's not about that. It's about human decency and having a conversation. So it's just not reality, man. So anytime that you get people that go just way out of their way to go over the top, they're trying to get noticed. There's something in their life that is missing and they're trying to get noticed. Yeah. And then when you notice them, like that, oh, that's great. They just got their jollies off. Like that's what they're here for. So, you can't take it personally, man. It is what it is. Keith says, in hindsight, is be more loss good for us?
Well, I think he's talking about like how I said it, like when you lose, it feels like as a coach, feels like a good thing. The pressure's off. I mean, the best thing is that the 49ers won every single game and won the Super Bowl. That's the best thing. But there is some such like sense of relief when you have the streak come to an end and you can refresh and you can learn and you can get back at it. So I mean, overall, no, I think it would be great if the 49ers just won every single game and won a Super Bowl forever.
Yeah. I think everything can be a learning lesson. I'm not going to say it was necessarily good or bad. What I will say is just playing Baltimore was absolutely good for the 49ers from the standpoint that Lamar Jackson is now 20-1 versus the NFC. There's a reason for that. And seeing him twice in a season makes it less shocking than when you saw it the first time. So if they do see him in a Super Bowl, I like their chances a lot more in that scenario because it won't be a shock when you see his athleticism and you see him on the field. It clearly is one of those stats that is very real, and it is shocking for NFC teams that don't see Lamar Jackson on a regular basis to finally play him and see his speed and everything he brings to the table. There is something to that. 20-1 is not a fluky number. It's just not. Brother Bob says, Jamorica, or you have a YouTube comment creators talking-ish. Yeah. Brother Bob and Matt are our YouTube comment creators. So there you go. Oh, YouTube content creators. Okay, yeah. Well, there is some of that as well, which is also extremely strange. Matt says, you guys see my poll on annoying fans? No, I didn't see your poll on annoying fans. Brother Bob says, in reality, I do call peeps clown to their faces. Okay, well, Brother Bob's like the one jerk that will actually call somebody a clown to their. Here's the thing. If you're getting into an altercation with somebody, then all bets are off. But if you're just sitting down and having a conversation with somebody you just met and you're talking about football, I don't know, man. Brother Bob, if that's how you're rolling, then I guess you're the one person that I didn't account for. Matt says the Purdy Colt beat out the Rams fan. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, never mind. I think I did see that. I know what you're talking about. Okay, let's talk about Jed York. And I love this topic, and I'm glad that you brought it to the forefront when we were talking about what we should discuss when we talk about the show. Jed York does deserve to be brought up because I think that Jed York, for many years, has definitely been thrown under the bus. And I think up until this most recent run, a lot of people would make the argument that he's not a very good owner. And I could see how you could make that argument after the way the Harbaugh era ended and getting Harbaugh out of here and then going from, Chip Kelly and Tom Zula and all these terrible coaches. I understand it. But what he has done here and putting together this front office and this regime and keeping it together, I have a gripe maybe that he extends people a little too early, but I will say he stays out of the way, it seems, as far as decision making goes and allows the football people and the football minds to make football decisions. And it has paid off in a big way that the 49ers have been very, very competitive for a good stretch here. And it seems like if they have found their quarterback and he's elite the way that some people believe he is, then they should remain competitive no matter what's going on around him. So that right there deserves talking about. Overall, how much credit do you give to Jed York for what's been happening? And do you believe that he has turned the corner from being a bad owner or being in that conversation to being, frankly, a pretty good owner? What do you think?
He's matured a lot, I will say that much. He
Yeah.
used to be more on the camera, like, in your face. We constantly heard from him, and now ever since basically since he's got Kyle and John, he's really taken the back seat, and you don't really hear from him. I haven't heard from him all year. Last time we heard from him was at the owners' meeting, where understandably he's there, and that makes sense why he's there, and he's talking to the press. But really, you haven't heard from Jed York at all. He's found his guys in John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, who he has
Yeah.
continues to extend. I mean, me personally, I think it was unnecessary to extend those guys, even if they're doing a great job. I felt that was a little unnecessary, but hey, he found his guys and he's happy with it, and he's willing to take the back seat and let them do their thing. And so I think he deserves credit for that. And this team is really good, and they are great at building up this roster, and they do have a great coach and a good GM. And so everything kind of fallen into place, and it looks like Jed York has done a great job so far. So we'll see. I mean, they got to pull it off. They got to win the Lombardi. That's what really matters. If they do that, then yeah, hell yeah, Jed York, man, he deserves his flowers. But overall, he's built a good team, good roster, good coaching staff, good general manager, and he's backed off, not tried to be in the limelight. And I don't like owners that are all in your face, right? Trying to make all the decisions. So I'm glad that Jed York has done what he's done over the last couple years. Again, I still think as great as Kyle and John are, a little premature extending them. I think it was unnecessary. But hey, if it works out, it works out. And so it's just kind of TBD. But overall, I think you've seen growth from Jed York.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the very least, he's turned the corner from bad owner to respectable owner. Until you win one, you can't be a great owner. I understand all of that, but he's definitely respectable. And he's not a guy that we should try to like just oust out of being an owner. You got Milaniac who brings up David Tepper. Could you imagine if that was the owner of the 49ers? And it's not even throwing the drink this last week. It's everything that's led up to that on top of it. It's you basically you built this whole staff this offseason, and you said you were going to stay out of their way to make decisions. Well, now it's come out that they basically wanted CJ Stroud, and you said, no, we're taking Bryce Young. And then after 11 weeks, you fired them after you handpicked them. That guy is an awful owner. And then you add in the whole drink throwing thing. He's terrible. That's what a terrible owner looks like. I agree with you, Milaniac. Completely agree. Brother Bob says, I get into confrontations all the time. I don't know why. And then Matt says, I have a few thoughts, Brother Bob. Very funny. GTC Real says, Brock can be elite next year. He has to learn how to dump a play. 2 passes last week irked me. This may be who he is, but throw away the secure possessions. Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at Brock Purdy and the things that he's improved on from last year to this year, and most impressively, really not having an off season. Like let's be real about the situation that was at hand for Brock Purdy. This was supposed to be his first full off season. He wasn't healthy, so he spent it rehabbing, and he was able to improve in so many ways. Most notably for me, the pocket presence and staying in the pocket, not bailing out of the pocket too early. Now there are times where games will go by and he doesn't even bail. And I'm thinking to myself, Bud, you can use your legs. Like, you're very athletic. It's okay to bail sometimes. He's almost staying in the pocket sometimes to a fault, but that is such an improvement to where he was at last year. And you see some of the other micro improvements he's made, and you have to applaud him. So yes, is he perfect? No. But if there are some things that you think he needs to improve on, I wouldn't bet against him improving on those things this offseason. If he sees that they are an issue as well, I think you would start to see him improve this offseason. So, do you need me to let you go, Ryan? I know that you got, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't, man, I got a show going right now with Steph and Stats, man. So I
Yeah.
apologize.
Let me do this and I'll get through the super chats here. All right, bro. I'll let you go. Thank you, Ryan. I just realized the time. I'll talk to you next week.
Sorry, I got to dip, man. I got to schedule these
All
better
good.
next time, but I
It's all good.
appreciate
It's all good.
Thanks for having me on the show, man.
All right, bro. Talk soon.
All right. See you, buddy.
All right. There we go. All right. I'll get through the super chats here. There we go. GTC Reels. Flav says, sorry if you already discussed, but I assume Ambry is done for the year. Hopefully we don't have to go back to what's his face and what's up with Brown. No, he's not done. He's supposedly having surgery and will be able to play in the playoffs. So I think that everything is going to be fine there. So, and what's up with Brown? Brown? Am I missing something, Flav? I'm not really sure what you're referring to, bud. Brother Bob says, okay, care to share? Curious to hear your thoughts. We'll save it for another time. Hit my DMs. And then Dazza says, I always hear a lot of Brock Purdy and CMC talk. I think we need to give Trent more props. I think he's the Niners' best player. Yeah, Dazza, we discussed this a little bit earlier. I think all the players are fantastic. I think that's really where we need to start. All of them have been fantastic. We have 4 players over 1,000 yards. One of them over 2,000 yards. Brock Purdy just broke the 49ers franchise single season record. I think all of them deserve praise. We can get into the weeds a little bit when we say, hey, this player's the best, this player's the best. Well, when this player was out, look at how it went. We're never truly going to know. All I know is that they are good to go. There we go, Flav. Thank you. Jair Brown's knee. I forgot that he didn't even play this week. I think everything that it seems like is that he's going to be good to go for the playoffs. It sounds like guys like Jair Brown, Eric Armstead, CMC, guys that would be questionable this week or doubtful are not going to play, and then they're going to play the other starters for at least a little bit. We'll see how long. That's why the bye week, Flav, is so crucial. I think all these guys that we're worried about now are probably going to suit up the first week of the playoffs. And that bye week is the reason why, really, is what it comes down to. So I think everything from that I've heard is that Jair Brown's going to be fine for the playoffs, but we'll see. We'll see, man. All right, y'all. Listen, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. I want to say this. I did put in the description of this tonight, every Tuesday going forward, I'm going to be on an NFC West roundtable with a content creator from Arizona, the Rams, the 49ers, obviously that's me, and I'm trying to blank, and Seahawks. They're so irrelevant. I just, I forgot that they were even in existence as far as the conference goes. But the Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals, and myself, I'm actually the smallest content creator as far as subs. So it's a really good group of guys that have a very, very big following. And every Tuesday, we are doing a roundtable. The link to that is in the description. You can check it out for sure. I'll be there tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, peace.